My first experience ever with the supernatural happened in Irvine, California at my grandma's house. My grandma still lives in the same house. She bought the house in the mid to late 50s. I was 6 or 7 years old. My mom and I were in the back room, watching Unsolved Mysteries. So it was pretty late at night. The TV was on. I was sitting on my bed. My mom was to the left of the TV doing her eyebrows. Very laid-back night watching the show together. All of a sudden, the sound in the room disappeared. There was no TV, no nothing. You could have heard a pin drop. I zoned out on the wall out of nowhere. This huge gust of wind blew all of my hair back. I look at the door to the bedroom. There is this huge shadow figure. No facial features, but it was the shape of a human. It was so tall, it almost surpassed the top of the door frame. After a few seconds goes by, it instantly realized that I had seen it. It turns and starts sprinting down the hallway. I jumped up from my bed, I run down the hallway and stop. I just knew not to follow it. All the way to the end of the hallway, out to the door. It makes it to the front door and it disappears. I'm standing completely confused. I go back to my room and it's as if nothing happened. My mom's still doing her eyebrows. The TV is still on. She didn't even ask me about what happened. So it was honestly as if time just stood still. From that point on, I would see things, hear things. We moved around quite a bit when I was growing up. And it didn't matter what house we were in. Something just chose to follow me. I would hear my name being called a lot of the time. It would either sound like my mom, or someone was trying to sound like my mom to get my attention. I would even hear my name in class in elementary school. And of course, as a little kid, you don't want to hear someone calling my name in the middle of class and draw attention to yourself. I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy, so I kept it to myself a lot of the time. But the experiences never went away. They slowed down once I hit my early teenage years, 11. 12, 13. But they never fully went away. Even to this day, I still experience a shift in the energy in the room and this overwhelming sense of dread. It didn't matter what house we were in. Sometimes it would happen during the day. A lot of times it was at night. Just this overwhelming sense of I'm not alone. Someone is watching me. Fast forward to middle school. I'm 12 years old. We're living in a townhome. Still in Irvine, but out of Grandma's house. Me, my mom and dad, my brother and sister. My parents decide that it's not working, and they tell us that they're getting a divorce. Dad moves out. He has his own place. That doesn't last long. And he ends up back at my grandma's. And he meets my stepmom. They get married. They have my youngest sister. And we move into a house in Northwood, not far from my grandma's house. At all this house. The first time that we did a walkthrough of that house, it didn't feel right to me. Downstairs, no problem. As soon as I went upstairs were my soon-to-be bedroom, my siblings' bedroom, and my dad and stepmom's bedroom was. I just had a feeling of I don't want to be here. This doesn't feel right. I ignored it. We move in. We're going back and forth, spending about half the week with my mom, half the week with my dad and stepmom. Nothing happened at first. It was a lot of feeling again. Dread every time I had to go up into their room, or even just walk past their room. I absolutely hated that feeling. I would ask someone to go up and close their bedroom door. I would avoid even looking down the hallway. If their door was open, it never gave me a good feeling. This was going on for a handful of months, and I felt very fortunate. that we moved into the same neighborhood that my best friend at the time was living in. Her house was 2 streets up in the same exact neighborhood. We were spending the night at each other's houses. Every weekend we would alternate and meet at the corner. Okay, whose house are we spending the night at tonight? Few months goes by, I keep having these feelings. I can't shake them. And her and I are having a sleepover at her house. I'm telling her about all these things, how scary it is, and I wish I could figure out what was going on. She laughs and she goes, "Hold on. I have something I want to show you." She goes to her bedroom closet, and she pulls out a Ouija board. I grew up in a very traditional Mexican household. Most of my family are believers. You don't mess with the supernatural, and you absolutely do not mess with Ouija boards, no matter what anyone tells you. It's not worth it. I always knew it was something you avoid, but we were teenagers. A few weeks later, it was my turn to host. Having her over, she brought the Ouija board with her. The light that I would use in my room had a dimmer setting. You could dim it almost all the way down to where it was almost like a very mild candlelight feel. We waited for everybody to go to bed and, of course, picked the absolute worst time, the witching hour as they call it, to bust out this Ouija board. Her and I are sitting right across from each other. Our knees are almost touching. There's obviously space on either side of us. It's just her, and we have my light all the way on. We're sitting there, she takes it out, explains to me how it works. We both place our hands on the Ouija board. She's like, "Okay, what do you want to ask it first? Do you have an idea of what could be in the house? Is it an adult? Is it a child? I don't know. Let's just ask it if there's a ghost in our house." She says, "Okay." We put our hands on the Ouija board. She asks the question. The little piece starts moving. So of course I'm like, "Okay, you're moving it. This isn't really happening." She starts freaking out, and she's like, "No, I'm not moving it, I promise you. It keeps moving all the way to yes." I start panicking. I ask her to stop, and we sit there for a second. Clearly, there's something here. I'm not going crazy. What do I ask it now? She thinks about it for a second, and she goes, "Why don't you ask its name?" We put our hands back on. She asks the question. It slowly moves to GE as it's getting closer to the letter O. My lights dim by themselves. I start accusing her of moving it again, and she's like, "No, I promise you I'm not moving it." The lights dimmed on their own. It spells out Geo. George, maybe. We're trying to figure out what this name could be. Going back and forth, we're both a little scared. We put our hands back on the Ouija board. She asks the last question, halfway through it moving. The lights dim again. I feel this overwhelming sense of dread. That same feeling. Every time I walk past my dad and stepmom's room, before I can even say anything to her, there's this sensation between where her and I are sitting. We are not sitting alone. I could very vividly feel the pressure of someone's leg. Against mine, I get up. I run and turn the light all the way back on. She's full panic, eyes wide. Did you feel that I said yeah? What the heck was that? We are completely freaking out. Don't want to wake anybody up. The lights are on. She puts everything away. Went to sleep. Looking back, I realize now, the biggest mistake that we could have ever made is not saying goodbye. We go to sleep, I honestly forget about it. We giggle about it in the morning over breakfast. She goes home, we're back at school Monday. Nothing really happens. Halfway into that week, I get a call from her around dinner time. She's at her mom's. She sounds freaked out on the phone. She's like, "Hey, have you been feeling anything since our last sleepover? When we used the Ouija board, ever since we used that thing the last couple nights, I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, there's somebody in my room." Fast forward to a few nights later. I go upstairs, I get ready for bed, shut all my lights off, get into my bed, pull the covers up, close my eyes, and I start to settle in. Within 5 minutes, there's this ringing in my ears. Wasn't super high-pitched, but enough to make me uncomfortable. I sit up, get a little nervous, and I'm like, "Okay, you're making it up. Just close your eyes and go back to sleep." I lay down, I get comfortable again. This time, the ringing is louder. Now I feel this pressure on my chest. I tell myself, "Don't open your eyes." I could feel someone staring at me almost nose to nose. If I open my eyes, it would be right there. The pressure in my chest is getting heavier. I get the courage to sit up and open my eyes. There's nothing there. I had to sleep with my light on that night. And of course, my dad gets up in the middle of the night. And he shuts it off for at least 6 months. Any time that I had to go to my dad's and stay there, that would happen every single night. Unless I kept my light on. I kept getting in trouble for falling asleep with the light on as soon as the lights would go off. This thing would be right in my face. When I was trying to sleep, I couldn't even use the dimmer anymore. They would shut themselves off. This started happening a lot. I felt so crazy I knew that my dad would be upset if he found out that I brought a Ouija board into his house, so I didn't say anything. My friend started experiencing the same thing. A few weeks goes by. I go to spend the night at her house. We are baking, watching movies, having a great time. Her mom goes upstairs to go to sleep. Her and I are alone. Her and I are starting to chat about the things that have been happening and the things we've been feeling. At the house, the only light that's on is the chandelier. She's like, "Let's grab our stuff. Let's go upstairs. We'll hang out in my room the rest of the night before we go to sleep." She goes up the stairs first, gets to the very top of the first set of stairs, and stops dead in her tracks, staring at the wall. I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs like, "What are you doing? Why are you not going to your room?" She doesn't turn around. She doesn't move. She doesn't look back at me. Nothing. She just says, "Don't move." I'm standing there terrified. What are we not moving for? What do you see that I'm not seeing? I slowly turn my head, just barely to the left. There is this little boy sitting on the chandelier, legs wrapped around the bottom, staring at her and I. Do we run? Do we walk? "What do we do here?" I said. "Just ignore it if you give it attention. It's only going to get worse. Walk upstairs, don't look over that way again." Her and I start with a walk, and of course, it turns into a run. We're terrified. We get to her room, sweating, freaking out. There's no way that really happened. It didn't. Go spend the night at her house for a few weeks after. That she told me. There was a few other times after that. Incidents that she saw him. I don't know if ignoring it is what helped it go away for her. But after a handful of times, it stopped happening. I had a few more experiences after that. I just thought this was going to happen for the rest of my life. I'd be in the bathroom getting ready for school. Someone would shake the door violently. I'm alone. There's no one there. Things like that happened for several months afterwards. A few more weeks goes by. My little sister was a baby at the time. It was just me, her, and my stepmom home, alone. She's upstairs falling asleep in her bassinet. An hour goes by, and she starts crying. Something woke her up. I go to look at the monitor. I see a hand gently patting her back. She falls back asleep. I'm like, oh, perfect. I don't need to go up there. My stepmom made it up there as she went back to sleep. She's fine. 2 minutes later, my stepmom walks in the front door from outside. I said, did you just come in from outside? Or were you upstairs with the baby? And she's like, no. I was cleaning out my car. I didn't say anything. I just sat there. I went back and looked at the video later. And of course, there's nothing on there. I have nothing to show for it or to prove it. After a couple days, I started really just trying to visualize what I had seen, to see if I could put together what the hand looked like, or whose hand it could have been. I remember there being this green emerald ring on the middle finger. That's the ring that my grandma wore pretty much every day after that experience. And seeing what I believe was her on the camera, soothing my sister, everything just stopped happening. I was able to sleep normally again. My friend wasn't seeing stuff anymore. I like to think that somehow she paid a visit, not just to see my sister, but to be like, hey, you guys don't belong here, move on. I actually found out from my friend, a few years after all this had happened, that there had been a lot of crime in our neighborhood. Prior to us moving in, there was a park right across from our house, right across the street, that you could see from my bedroom window. I found out a few years later that a man that lived in the neighborhood for several years took his life at that park. I don't know if because our house was in such close proximity to the park, if maybe there was just this bad energy from stuff that had happened there, or from what happened with him lingering in the area. But I can definitely say, I'm still a firm believer that stuff is real. I have not used a Ouija board since 10, and I'll never use one again. I definitely still have experiences. I'm about to be 32 in November, and stuff still happens. It's not nearly as bad as it was. I make jokes about it now. I feel like keeping it lighthearted. It one doesn't scare me, but it also doesn't welcome in the darker, maybe more sinister spirits that could potentially make themselves known. The most recent experience I had was actually about a week ago. My grandfather unfortunately passed away early May. It was very unexpected. I took the loss really hard. I get married in a couple of weeks, and he was so unbelievably excited for the wedding. I was given some of his things. I just feel badly. Wanted something of his to keep around. I have a picture of him from barber school. He was a very proud barber for over 60 years, on the same shelf as his photo. I have a pair of beads of his that he wore all of the time. He loved to wear necklaces, and I have his hair cutting scissors. A week ago, I was getting ready for work, and out of nowhere, the light started making this weird buzzing noise and was dimming itself almost in frequency. There was no music on, no TV on. And I giggled and I was like, "Oh, Grandpa, you came to visit? I've been waiting for you." As soon as I said that the lights shut themselves off and back on, they started making that sound again and dimming in frequency. The more that I talked to him, the more the lights started doing that. They would get really bright and then really dim again. It was him paying a visit. I still talk to him every now and again, and the lights will do their thing. I'm sure a lot of that is just having his stuff in our apartment, but I definitely still have experiences to this day I'm just grateful that they're a little bit nicer now than they used to be. If you have a true scary story that happened to you and you want to share it with the rest of us, go to truescarystory.com and fill out the form. You can always reach out to me in case you have any questions. Anyway, if you like the show, drop some stars for us in the ratings and reviews. I'll be back next week with another story. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon. Please listen to the story Roommates. In a small college town in the Midwest, a group of roommates moves in, expecting a fun summer, until something unseen makes its presence known. My name is Edwin, and here is Brain's true scary story. This took place in 2020. It was in a little riverside college town in the Midwest. It was 5 of us girls who were just moving into a new college-style house. Some of us had already graduated from school, so we were going to just all be there for an extra year, whether that be working or just finishing up school. One of the girls of the house that we were moving into had already lived there for a few years, and we were all friends with her. 4 of us moving into the house were brand new. We moved in, though, mid-May of 2020. Unfortunately, we had left by the beginning of August of 2020, so it was short-lived. Just to understand the story, I will have to lay out what the house looked like. It's very important to know what levels, what rooms. Everything makes the story easier to follow. It was a 2-story house. When you walk into the front door, though, it was a stairwell that separated the levels, so if you went down the hallway, straight through the stairwell, it was a little hallway that led to the basement. The basement was just storage. Nothing really that important. When you walk into the stairwell, directly off to the right, there's another door that leads to the main level. And then obviously when you walk in, there's a stairwell as well that goes up to the upper level. That also has a door that leads into that top. On the main level, there are 2 bedrooms with its own bathroom and its own kitchen. And that's also where the main living space is, with the living room that we all share. Upstairs, there's also 3 bedrooms, and it does also have its own bathroom and its own kitchen. How it was all split off is also very important, of who was in what room. I had leased one of the rooms on the main level of the 2, and then there was the other girl who had lived there full time, lived in the other room over the summer. I had another job back in my hometown, so I was going to be traveling back and forth. So I actually sublet out my room downstairs to someone that I knew for that summer, just so it was paid for, and then I would just come back every once in a while to visit. Upstairs, there were the 3 bedrooms. 2 of them, again, were going to be there full time, and the 3rd roommate was not going to be there all summer long. So it worked out that when I would come to visit, I would just stay in her room so I had a place to sleep. Stay put my things while I would be visiting. In the beginning, mid-May. When we had moved in, everything was really fun. It was the beginning of 2020, obviously. So COVID was hitting. We didn't have a lot of options of things to do, so we spent a lot of time together. We watched movies and played games. One of the girls had access to the rooftop from their rooms. We would sit out there and listen to music. It started off really well those first few weeks. The subleaser had moved into my room at the end of May, so I had gone home to start my job. A few weeks later, though, I had come back to visit and was staying in the room upstairs. The girls had mentioned some weird things happening. Nothing had really been off. No weird occurrences had happened with the tenants that lived there before, and we all knew them so. This was very strange that these things were happening. It started very small. That night, all of their doors were closed. So the two girls that were living there, as well as the empty room, all of the doors were closed. At night, when they would sleep, the girls stated that when they were sleeping, either trying to fall asleep, or they'd wake up in the middle of the night from it. They would hear humming coming from the hallways. They didn't specifically say if it sounded like a specific song, random little humming noises. That would be coming from the hallway, and then just go away and randomly reappear. The door to the empty room they did also keep closed. When they would wake up, the door would always be open. The weird thing about this, though, was that door was particularly hard to open and close, so it wasn't wind or something we could rationalize off. What would open that besides someone actually physically opening it themselves? Something that we still don't understand to this day is that is the only room in the house that has a padlock on it. Don't know why it was there. We don't know who had put that on there. And eventually, we did start. Sing it when the door wouldn't stop opening. And eventually, closing in the middle of the night. At that point, things were still fairly new. We were rationalizing off those little occurrences that were happening. But it just felt heavy upstairs. Whenever I'd walk around, I would creep around the corner first. Or walk really slow, like I felt like I had to establish and see everything in the space before I would feel comfortable walking into it. I just was so curious. I felt like something was seriously watching me all the time, no matter what room I was in. Bathroom, kitchen, it was bad. One of my first real experiences was while I was taking a shower. A lot of these events happen so fast, and it's really hard to always remember the order of operations. But this definitely happened towards the beginning, when I was in the shower again. It was the same feeling of being watched. I kept looking outside the curtains, and I know sometimes you do that when you're alone, and you kind of a little paranoid. But I seriously was looking out very frequently, looking behind me. I felt a little tickle on my neck, but I was again trying to rationalize that saying, I'm in the shower, the water's running on me, I'm washing my hair. But I tried to end of that shower as soon as possible. Once I got out, I did bring up to the two girls that lived upstairs when they got home that I took a shower. And it felt weird, you know. I felt like something tickled me. But I think I'm just overreacting. They looked at me and they said, "Oh, we don't shower alone. If someone's taking a shower in there, they leave the door open, or someone's sitting on the toilet next to them. Because when they're in the shower and they're alone, or no one's near them, their hair will move. Like someone's picking up their hair, picking at it or rubbing their back. The shower, and this also happens to the sink, will just turn really hot, scalding hot all of a sudden, and they'll just kind of jump out of the water. They just will not be alone in that room." Their reactions when I had told them about the shower, and when they were explaining to me, you know, how they don't shower without someone with them. It seemed more matter of fact, like it was happening so often that they were like, duh, why would you shower alone? I was freaked out, and they were freaked out by all of the occurrences. But that was just something that had happened so often. I think they were just, unfortunately, used to it at that point. We were having a lot of fun together, so we kind of put up with it for a while. And they just brushed that off. Until it started to get worse. This only happened upstairs, so the girls downstairs really didn't experience anything. I'm not quite sure if they believed the girls upstairs, but I experienced it myself. With all of these things occurring at night, with the humming, the door opening. We started sleeping with our lights on. We tried to rationalize that. Maybe if we left the lights on, it wouldn't do those things. We'd trick it to think we were awake. One of my roommates in particular, Megan, had the typical college lights, the sticky lights that are around your ceiling, and you have a remote that turns them on and off, and they can change color. The lights would turn off, so you would try to keep the lights on to sleep, but they would just randomly turn off. She kind of tried to experiment with it and move the remote that she had under her, or sleep with it under the bed. For some reason, if something's touching it, it can't. But she had done this, and the next morning, she woke up and the lights were turned off, and she had looked and the plug from the wall had actually been ripped out. Something had physically taken the plug out of the wall because it wasn't able to access the remote, that she had to turn the lights off. That also happened in the room I was staying in. It was controlled by a remote, and it even was happening when we were moving in. We just thought, oh, these lights are broken. Why do they keep turning off? But we still don't really understand, I guess, after all of this. But we think it might be related to what was happening in Megan's room, but we're not quite sure. At this point, we don't know what's going on. We have an inkling that it's maybe something messing with us, but we don't really know. We haven't seen anything. It's all been things that we've been trying to rationalize. Maybe bad plumbing, maybe bad electrical, maybe the house is moving, so the door is opening. But then, it started to become more frightening and obvious. My one roommate, Sarah, was targeted by these scary things, a little bit more than others. One of them was she was up in her room doing homework, watching TV, and she had randomly heard blood-curdling scream coming from downstairs. Just horrible screaming. Thought someone was injured. So she ran out of her room, ran down the stairwell, burst into the living room, and then went and checked on the roommates to see what was going on, and both the subleaser, as well as the other roommate that lived downstairs, were both just chilling in their room, watching Netflix, not doing anything. No noises, nothing. So that happened multiple times. You would be upstairs and just hear noises downstairs, and nothing would be there at all. We all had very vivid dreams as well. I was staying in the room that had the padlock on it. It was really hot, so I had a fan on. I had my laptop up playing some kind of show on Netflix. I was trying to fall asleep, and I did turn the lights off. My leg was sticking out from under the covers, and it felt like something was kind of tickling my leg. But again, I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was the wind of the fan, with maybe some leg hairs. I don't know, I tried, and then all of a sudden, it kind of became like scratch. So I immediately sat up, and I didn't even think to turn on a flashlight or turn on the room lights. I took a picture with the flash. I was going to send it to my friend, who was actually leasing that room, and I was going to send her that picture. And I looked at it, and there was a red scratch mark and a bruise, and kind of a little hole in my leg in that part. I don't remember there being a bruise there before. I don't remember there being a red mark. It looked like there might have been a scab on my leg. That was kind of ripped off. It had scared me enough that I turned the lights on and was trying to sleep with the lights on again. Somehow that night, I did fall asleep. My first dream was me having a lake day with my family. We were all swimming in the lake, Some of us were outside on the dock, but most of us were swimming. All of a sudden, the lake had turned black. Everyone's eyes had turned black, and they just all had a blank stare and were going underwater. The family members, including me, who did not do that. They were trying to swim underneath their feet and pull them under and drown them. And I remember in my dream taking a t-shirt and trying to cover my feet so, like, I wouldn't get pulled down. Then all of a sudden it snapped, and I was in a field. It was a big, open, green rolling hills field, and I was standing there with a goat that was on its hind legs. Somewhere in this, the goat had assaulted me. I then woke up because I had wet the bed. I have never wet the bed before in my life. Adult life, middle school childhood. I even called my dad to ask. I said, "Is this a habit that maybe I'm reverting back to?" And he's like, "No. You never did through my college years. Never." Obviously, I was mortified. This wasn't my bed, so I got up immediately. I took all of the sheets down to the washing machine. I threw them in and I called my friend, just wanting to be transparent and let her know and apologize. And she said, wait, 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 back up, she said. What was in your dream? And I had mentioned the dream. And she said, Bryn, do you not realize that the goat is an animal, representative of the devil? And I processed that. I said, yeah. You're correct saying that. So from that night on, I never slept in that room again. I moved all of my things downstairs, and I slept in the living room. Even in the living room, though. Even though there was no really occurrences downstairs, the dogs that were my roommates would still bark at dark corners randomly. They would bark at the door that led to the stairwell. They would just bark at it incessantly at random, although those things would happen again. I didn't know if that was just dogs being dogs, but I felt a lot safer downstairs. But yeah, after that, nope, never slept in that room ever again. And I don't think anyone else has. None of our roommates have. At some point during all of this, I was at my hometown and Megan, my roommate, had told her mom, and her mom was concerned enough that she called the medium to try to come in to see if she could help. When we were telling the medium about what was happening, she said that it sounded like there might be two things there. She said she would be willing to help. And she did say, I want to do a drive by the night before, just to get a feel for the house, before I actually come in. She did a drive by and by the morning. She had blocked all 3 of their phone numbers and never got back to us. So at that point, we were kind of just on our own. We also did a lot of research on the house and couldn't find any dirt on the house. We couldn't find anything about any kind of weird offense, any crimes. The house was right next to a Lutheran church, so we have no idea if that had anything to do with it. The house was also under construction. On the external parts of it, they were doing new windows and new walls, so we were just trying to grasp at any, maybe, reason why these things would have happened to us, and no one else. Unfortunately, things did not get any better. They actually got more physical again. I had mentioned that I had a bruise on my leg. Sarah had bruises all over her body. I even mentioned when I woke up the next morning, look at what's on my leg, and she said, oh, I have those all over me. So she had bruises all over her body, all up her legs, her arms. One weekend she had left to go camping, and all of the bruises had gone away. When she came back within a few days, they were all back. They just felt something touching them when they would be sleeping. So both of them really didn't get a lot of sleep. So both of them were kind of just mentally not there for a few months. Sarah also had an encounter where she was in her room, and she was working on homework, and she had all of her things kind of spread out on the floor. She was just working, head down, legs crossed, leaning over, and she had a mirror, a glass mirror. So not one of the kind of plastic, cheap ones you can put over your door. She had a glass mirror that was leaning up against the wall. She had looked up at one point. She saw something moving, and the mirror was actually tipping over onto her, and she was able to catch it. If she didn't look and see it and catch it, it probably would have smashed over her head. The most concerning part of that, besides her potentially getting injured, was this mirror was leaning against the wall. If it were to fall, it should have slid. The bottom of it should have come out from under it, and should have slid and fell flat. But it tipped up and over, and she had to catch it to stop it. Megan, at night, had a few encounters as well of being touched, just like Sarah had this first night. It was most vivid for her. She was laying in bed, obviously had the lights on, and she could see handprints crawling into her bed, on her sheets. Once they got close enough, she could feel the pressure of the blankets getting tighter around her and on her. That happened more than one occasion. Soon, it started actually showing itself. But we still don't know what this thing really was. Megan one night was asleep. She had woken up because she heard something in the corner of her room. She sat up and looked, and there was a little boy standing in the corner of her room, just looking at her. She described him maybe as like 6 years old. Didn't really get enough of a look to get outfit or anything, but definitely saw a little boy standing in the corner of her room. She looked away, and it wasn't there. The door at the top of the stairwell, it started moving in the middle of the night, and opening and closing and knocking. Someone would be knocking at it, so they would start locking it when they would be home, or when they would be sleeping. And you'd have to use the key to get into the upstairs. Even when they locked it, the knocking still continued. But they started hearing, like someone trying to get in with a key. And one time, they actually came home, and Sarah had seen some kind of little boy moving around the key that had been in the door, and then it had gone away. So they had seen this apparition of a little boy multiple times, but again, the medium had said that it seemed like there might be multiple things, and these things were scaring us. It was like meaning to make us feel uncomfortable. So we don't particularly believe that. It might have just been this little boy trying to mess with us, all of our dreams, and just the horrible feelings we had. It felt like something might be acting as a little boy, or there might be multiple things that were there. We still to this day don't really understand why all this happened. We didn't really talk about it for a long time. I was honestly hesitant to come on and share it, because the people that lived in there before us never had anything. But ultimately, it became so overwhelming and furious, and just ultimately scary. They weren't sleeping, we weren't sleeping. I wasn't able to be in the house anymore. We all left the house by the beginning of August. We were getting subleases, and we all had different places to live. We were still not sure if. Maybe it followed one of us into the house, We're not sure if anything continued after that. We felt kind of bad about it, but it doesn't sound like anything happened to the new subleasers. But we did not disclose anything to the new subleasers. It didn't seem like it was targeting the people before, and we were so desperate to get out. I think they were a little suspicious as to why we were leaving so fast. I would be. But we were all able to get subleasers really quick, and we were able to move out, luckily, really quick. I don't think it's followed any of us afterwards. I think we've all been able to just move on. But we couldn't put up with what was going on. We were too scared that we did have to leave. To share your own story with our community, go to truescarystory.com. And if you have questions or want to get in touch, I'll leave my information in the description of this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon. Please listen to the story. A warning from my mother. What happens when eerie encounters refuse to be ignored? One man's life has been haunted by inexplicable events. But now, avoiding the supernatural may no longer be an option. My name is Edwin, and here is Andrea's true scary story. My name is Andrea. I'm from South Africa. My mom is the very spiritual one. And because I'm Portuguese, we are part of the Christian Catholic religion. She would tell me a lot growing up about seeing things, or giving messages, or getting messages from somebody, saying something is about to happen in your life. She didn't really influence me as much. And my dad also didn't quite believe in it as much as what she did, but throughout my life, there's been a few small things that happened that I'd talk to her about. And then she would always turn around to me and say, "Yeah, you see, it's real." When I was 8 or 9 years old, just after my sister was born, we used to live in this very big mining house. So in South Africa, when you work for the mines, which is what my dad used to do, they would provide housing. Now, the housing that was provided was built back in the 1960s. And in this house, there's a lot of wooden floors. You could hear quite well when somebody was walking around through the hallways towards the bedrooms, towards the sitting room. It was quite difficult to sneak around the house. The first encounter occurred one night when I was taking a bath in my parents' bathroom. All of our rooms were on the same side of this house. If you walked down the hallway facing the rooms, my bedroom would be on the right, and my parents' would be on the left. The bathroom would also be on the left, but it would be just before my parents' bedroom. I was taking a bath in their bathroom this one evening. My dad was working late due to some incident that happened at the mine. I was playing with my toys in the bath when I heard footsteps coming down the hallway. I could tell that this was my mom walking towards the bedroom. When I saw her walk past, I greeted her and kept playing, thinking everything's normal. She went to fold up laundry in the bedroom. After a few minutes, I heard heavier footsteps coming down the hallway, so I shouted for my dad, thinking that he had arrived home safely. My mother shouted from the bedroom saying, "No, your dad can't be home because he hasn't called me yet. He's still underground dealing with the incident." So I thought that was strange, but carried on playing anyways. And then I heard footsteps coming down that hallway, towards the bedroom again, still sounding heavy. So I thought again that it was my father. I shouted to my mom that, "Hey, Dad is home." But she shouted at me again, saying, "No, he's not home. She still hasn't received the call. He's still at work. He's still underground." Right after she told me that, I heard the footsteps coming towards the bathroom again. But it's as if they were going to walk across the entrance to the bathroom. So I waited, and I looked to see if there was anyone coming through. But I didn't see anyone. The footsteps stopped, and I was looking at the hallway and didn't see anybody there. I faced basically the bathroom door, which was open, and it looked like some weird black cloak disappeared behind the bathroom door. As I was looking at it, I freaked out. I shouted for my mom to come get me. I told her what had happened, so she came running. I kept staring at the door. When she came in, I pointed to the door, trying to explain to her what I just saw. And then she just told me that if I ever see darkness, or see anything that's out of the ordinary, I must pray. She would always be watching over us, with regards to the spiritual world. You know, the paranormal. And sometimes she would even tell us things that either hasn't happened yet, and then it would happen, or you know, something that we wouldn't have told her, but she knows about it. It's actually frightening sometimes. I'm even getting goosebumps right now, thinking about it, and I have a funny feeling that when I am done here, I'm gonna probably get a phone call from her saying that, no, were you talking about me? 'Cause stuff like that happens. It's weird. This was a few months later. I used to have a pet hamster named Alex in my bedroom. If you go straight into my bedroom, my bed would be on your left. Then I would have a desk at the end of the bed, and then I would have this huge window facing our back garden. While I had my hamster Alex, I had him in a cage, and the cage was always on that desk in front of the bed. When I tried to go to sleep during the night, I would hear the squeaking coming from his little wheel that he would run on. I think it was a few days before the event. He somehow escaped from his cage, and he ran out of my window. We looked inside the cage. We could not find it. We searched quite thoroughly for it, and we just couldn't find Alex the hamster. Few days later, after he had disappeared, I went to bed quite early because it was a school night. I woke up during the night feeling uneasy, as if something is watching you, or someone's there in the corner, just staring down at you with this pressure on you. It's quite a strange feeling. I sat up, and I didn't hear my parents in the television room, so I assumed that it was late enough, that they were already sleeping. I tried to go back to sleep. I heard the footsteps coming down that hallway again. At first I thought maybe it's my mom, because my mom would stand up, take the dogs outside for them to go and do their business, and then she would come back inside. But it would have been a bit strange if it was just her on her own, because normally she would have the dog's footsteps following behind her. I just kept feeling like there was some sort of pressure surrounding the atmosphere in my room. But I heard the footsteps, and they started getting closer to my bedroom door. My bedroom door would normally be closed enough that I could still have a bit of light coming from the hallway if somebody turned on the light. But there was no light at all. So I know for a fact that it wasn't my mother. Then the feeling of a supposed anxiety got worse. The footsteps kept coming, stopped right outside my door. Something pushed my door lightly so that it could open a bit, and I saw it opening, and I thought, okay, you know what? My mom is just checking up on me. She's making sure I'm sleeping, because it is a school night, but nobody poked head around to see me nothing. And I began to hear my hamster's wheel start squeaking, as if he was running on it, but running super fast. That's when I just freaked out. I threw the blanket over my head. I screamed out in terror when that squeaking got so loud. It's as if it was right next to me. Mother came running from her bedroom, asking me what's happening, stopped. We checked the cage. No hamster. After that event happened, we went outside of our front door. So the front door, to the whole household, was actually quite close to where my bedroom door was. So I always thought that he escaped through the window and into the garden, and the next day, I found him in the garden, right in front of the front door, which was amazing. He came back. My mom said that something was kind of affecting me, so she said that we need to call somebody to come and cleanse the house, to get the house clean. But my dad was always very against the idea. This would cause quite a lot of fights between them. Money wasn't a problem for us. We were very fortunate. But my dad was always under a lot of pressure at work. Whenever he got home, there would be quite a lot of negativity from his side, because his work was not easy. Especially for the mines in South Africa. It's quite a difficult job to do. So he was under a lot of pressure all the time. Because of that, my parents used to fight quite a lot. So I could hear them sometimes screaming at each other, shouting. My dad would be the first one to really raise his voice. But my mom used to keep saying this thing to him of, "You are bringing such negative energy into our household, and it's affecting your son. So that's basically affecting me." We moved around quite a lot because of my dad's work. So we moved into this brand new house. We had an upstairs and a downstairs. This is why. This makes these events a bit strange for me, because nobody has lived in this house at all. We were the first family to live in this house. This was about 2 years after my sister was born. This one night, my sister and we were downstairs. My sister was sleeping on a 2-seater couch. Opposite me and I was on the other. Similar 2-seater couch watching TV. My sister's sleeping. She's tossing and turning a little bit, but nothing is bothering her as much. Next, out of the blue moment, she wakes up, she looks at me, and as if it was a ticking time bomb, she just started screaming, as if somebody was physically hurting her. So I got up, I ran to her, and I tried to calm her down. And a few moments later, my mother came down, asking, "What did I do? What did I do?" So my mother came, picked her up. She calmed her down. And then my mother sat on the couch with my sister, and everything was fine. We carried on watching TV. My sister fell asleep, my mom's arms. My mom put her down next to her, just to give her a more comfortable position to lie in. After a few minutes, once again, out of the blue starts freaking out. Just didn't make sense. But she did this thing where she would sit up. She starts screaming. But then she's pushing something in front of the couch. She's like extending her arm away, as if something is attacking her from under the couch. So she just kept extending her arm, trying to push something away. We are going towards her. My mom picks her up, and she's still got her arm extended, pushing whatever it is. We both freaked out by what's happening. So my mom just takes her, starts praying. Still don't know what happened. But my sister talked about it later on, when we got older, and she says no. She remembers that. It was these black dogs trying to attack her. They were trying to drag her away. That's what she remembers. That's so quite strange. Time passed. We still in this new house. I'm sleeping in my room if you climb up the stairs. The first door directly in front of you was the entrance to my bedroom. Left was the office/study room. And then on the other side of that was my parents' and my sister's bedroom. I fell asleep that night and woke up with that same uneasy feeling I had in the other house. I'm lying down facing the entrance, and I can see my cupboards, where my clothes and toys used to be packed away, and I saw that my middle cupboard where my toys were was left open, which is a very strange thing to happen, because every time I went there to put on my clothes, before climbing into bed, I was taught from my parents that I must always close a cupboard and don't leave it open. I could see like an outline of the shelves, and it was very bright, like white. So even though it was dark, you could still make out a little bit of the shape of the shelves. Once I saw that, there was kind of like a weird cloth that I saw in the previous house coming out of the cupboard, but sloping downwards like smoke. If you've ever seen cold vapor, whatever flowing down the shelf, if you open the freezer during a really hot day and you see that vapor just crawl underneath and fall straight down because it's cold, it was like that, but it's black. I tried to close my eyes, didn't want to look at it, but I looked at the cupboard again, and that's when I saw these two bright red eyes looking at me, and I jolted awake, like your body just jumps up from, as if you got a fright when you're falling. Screamed my lungs out. Even our house alarm went off, which was also strange, because nobody was at the bottom story, or the downstairs area. It's almost as if the alarm went off at the same time as I did. My mother ran in. She said her famous words. "Okay, just pray. I told you, if you see that, you need to pray, don't let it in." But I was just so freaked out. I didn't think of doing that stuff. The same house again. I think I was lucid dreaming. You can't move your body at all. You can move your eyes, but you can't really move your body at all. So I think in this evening, that's what was happening to me. So I was sleeping and woke up very late in the morning. Can't remember the time, probably off to about 2 a.m., and I couldn't move my body, as if it was like... With an instinct, I looked at the cupboards, where I saw that shadow face thing with the red eyes. But my cupboards were closed. Didn't see anything. So I thought, okay, I'm safe, I felt comfortable. Then I decided to look at my bed, my headrest. That was a big mistake. So I saw this face, like a face that had a mask above my head. It started forming, but it did it in such a way that it's like it just starts appearing out of thin air, solidifying this very vivid, detailed image of a face in front of you. I don't know whose face it was, because it looked like it was wearing a mask. I freaked out. I felt this heavy pressure. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move, but I tried to see if I could wake my body up. I kept trying to move. It still kept coming towards me after it had formed. Eventually, I got feeling in my body and I punched at the face, kind of like a fight or flight response. I remember seeing my arm going through it before he disappeared. Since then, if I ever have like a lucid dream, or if I'm ever awake, but I can't move my body, I will keep my eyes closed, because I don't want to see that again. There was just such a horrible pressure after that, and I think that's why I just tried to fight it. My mother would always try and be in control, and she would always cleanse, even if my dad didn't believe it. She still did it because she believed that it was, like, very important, and she would always protect us. My grandparents are from Portugal. My uncle, my mom's brother, he passed away when he was 24, and my uncle was buried there. So when we went to visit, we stood on top of his grave. And since that first time, I always have, like, a comfortable feeling that he's around me. You know that I know everything is fine. And my mother says that he is always around the kids, always around my sister and I. He is our guardian angel. He is protecting us. And I think that's sometimes why I see things, even if I don't believe them. I will still experience small things. My mother is quite a big role in all of this stuff because of her being more religious. So everything, ironically enough, kind of ties around her. I used to have an ex-girlfriend in high school. Her mother passed away when she was about 3 years old. So she hasn't had a mom for many years. It was quite sad, but, she carried on. So we started going out. She used to tell me about her mom, and, I used to see her, pictures of them when my ex was a little baby, with her mom on her mom's lap. What happened with this story was, she told me about her mom, and she would sometimes have quite vivid dreams, as if her mom was still around her. I always thought, I don't think there's anything there. Maybe there's no meaning to the messages that your mom's trying to give you in your dreams. So she would say that her mom in her dreams would say, no, that she's found someone that she can talk to. And I thought, okay, that's very weird. Then she says that her mom felt a pulling force towards another person. It wasn't me, because I didn't really feel anything change, and nothing happened to me specifically. However, because we were going out, and her mom kept telling the daughter that, oh, I'm feeling a pulling force. She was actually feeling that pulling force to my mom, so I disregarded everything she said. But a week after that, my mom says, listen, she's not feeling well. There's someone that is bothering me. When I'm trying to sleep, and I asked my mom, what do you mean I don't understand? Who is someone? So my mom says no. She woke up, she saw this lady talking to her, and she wanted my mom to try and communicate with her daughter through my mom. She kept bugging my mom for 2 nights, and my mom eventually had enough, and she came to me and said, listen, I need to have a talk with this girl. I need her to come over now. I need to sit down, because this lady is bothering me the whole time. I cannot sleep, it's messing me up. So much so that my mom even looked sick. My ex came over, we sat down around a table. My ex didn't have to say anything. My mom told her everything about her mom, how she passed, why she wants to communicate with her. She wore glasses, a specific accessory that you need for every day. So she says no. She wore these black glasses, and she did this. And these are the common things that she would want you to remember her for. And my ex broke down in tears saying, she can't even explain, because she never told me all of those details to me, so that I would tell my mom no. My mom knew all of this stuff all by herself. That was very scary. Still, these things happen. And my mom still says you are sensitive to it. Even if you deny it, you still gonna see it because you're sensitive to it. But I don't know, I'm 27 years old now. It's freaky that it still happens. They say that dogs can see this sort of thing. We have a little pickiness. Sometimes during the night, he stares at the door and he barks and he doesn't stop. This one last event happened about 2 weeks ago. I normally set my alarm for 5 a.m. or 5 a.m. so that I can drive to work, because it's about an hour's drive. But what happened this morning? I forgot that I actually switched it off. So my first alarm went off. I would normally snooze it. Then my second alarm would go off 30 minutes after the first one. But this morning I switched both of them off. Don't know how, but that happened. Now it's 6 in the morning when I always leave for work. I was in dreamland. I heard this scream, like this loud shout as if it was right in my ear. That woke me up, and you wake up. You get a fright, you trying to catch your breath. That's how I was. I thought, what's happening? Is it my girlfriend? Is she okay? Because we live together. So she's next to me. So I thought, oh, maybe she's screamed no. She's passed out. She's not even facing my direction. Whatever it was, woke me up at the exact time that I had to go to work. So then I phoned my mother about this, and I told her the story of what happened. As I'm telling her the story, she tells me no. I'm getting goosebumps right now, just hearing you. Tell me about this woman that screamed. And then she starts asking me questions like, was she old? Was she young? I said to her, I don't know. I can't really tell how. The difference between an old and young scream, but it's a scream. And then she tells me it's weird that it's a woman, because it would sound maybe like your uncle and not somebody else. So then my mom says, listen, you need to be careful because it would be maybe possible that it's your uncle. If it's a man's voice, but if it's a woman, maybe it's something else. So be careful. Do you know of someone who has a true scary story that takes place in the woods? Let me know by going to truescarystory.com and to get in touch or join our Scary Plus members that get to listen ad-free. Check out scaryplus.com or get in touch with me if you have any questions. I'll leave links to everything in the description of this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon.